Hey now, good morning, happy Monday, Film Scoring Monday. PSW staff, clients, friends joining us for Monday. Okay, I mean, we know what day it is. This is Film Scoring, Monday, when we look at a scene from a movie and I take out the music and you guys get better and better at this. This will be an interesting assignment. This is a little bit, maybe like the hours, because I had a particular, assignment with choosing a Philip Glass score. So we'll get to that, but we need to get about what we're talking about today. And actually this week, I'd like to, a few things this week. We're going to be diving more into this on our advanced class for Wednesday, but I want to look at the movie today and your scene today, do some music foundation tomorrow for Tuesday's class, review and foundation. Wednesday, getting a little deeper into this. Thursday, LA, Friday, we're done. And then do it all over again next week. Okay, so today we're going to look at a movie that I showed you guys in school. And, won Best Picture, won a bunch of other awards, maybe one of the greatest movies ever made. One of the greatest movies about a composer, for sure. But it's not about a composer. It's not a biography. We're going to talk about what this movie's about. So today, we're going to look at the 1984 film, Amadeus. This class will be a little philosophical, and I want to pose some questions to you too. Have you ever wondered why it's so easy for some other people to create work? We all have our favorite artists, right? And we think, how did they do that? And, we're not talking about just classical music. This is any art. This is a painter. This is a rap artist. This is a designer. This is a decorator. Anybody that does something. This is a chef, something creative. I'm sure all of us have said, well, I want to do that too. And then when we start doing it, we think, why was it easier for that other person? Or is it easier? Or how does that whole thing? This is the theme of Amadeus. Amadeus is not a biography about Mozart. I mean, it is in some ways, but that's what transcends it into a brilliant work of art by Peter Shaffer. Peter Shaffer wrote this book, 1979 he writes it, playwright, and he teams up with Milos Forman. Milos Forman's the director, very famous for One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest with Jack Nicholson in 1975. That movie put him on the map. He's a Czechoslovakian born, but came to America to make his movies and to make his bones. And he teams up with Shaffer, and they kind of, he's very impressed with Shaffer's play. We'll talk about, I'm just trying to first bring some larger aspects of how, as individual artists. So there's themes about artistry, creativity, mediocrity, God, all of these, genius, all of these things that we're going to be talking about this week, because I do want to extend this conversation, show more scenes of Amadeus on Wednesday, because it's also a really good representation of how composers work, and how they think and how they hear music. Because when we think of composers and even songwriters too, where does inspiration come from? Because we've talked about music, it's abstract. It comes out of nowhere. It's one thing about hearing a story and then writing that story down. Not that that's easy either. Making a film, putting a camera there. But something as abstract as a painting or a piece of music comes from, in us somehow. But it starts with nothing. There's a blank page and a blank canvas. So what's that abstraction? So we're gonna talk a little bit about. And there's envy and jealousy because we see other people do it, and how do they do it? And so we're gonna be talking about all these things together, because this is something that I struggle with, and I don't know. So are we having too much fun right now, or is this too struggling? So many wonderful scenes in this movie. So it comes out in 1984, but it does take place, when Mozart's his last. Well, it is kind of about his life, but it's this rivalry between Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, probably the most famous. We've done Mozart classes, probably the most famous composer of all time. We looked at, does Mozart make you smarter? And then we kind of thought, no, I don't know if that IQ thing was real. We've looked at it. We've listened to all of his music, so we'll be talking about his music, of course, and scoring a scene. But Salieri was a real composer, just like Mozart was, and they were more peers. But this movie makes them more as rivals, and that's what the play is about Salieri feeling mediocre compared to Mozart, Salieri praying to God to make him a better composer or make him a great composer, as great as Mozart. And why do things come easier to certain artists? And in this case, Mozart, and Salieri is very religious and prays to God, saying, make me a great composer. Make people love me.
Lord, make me a great composer. Let me celebrate your glory through music and be celebrated myself. Make me famous through the world, dear God. Make me immortal. After I die, let people speak my name forever with love for what I wrote. In return, I will give you my chastity, my industry, my deepest humility, every hour of my life.
And when he meets Mozart, which we'll look at that scene, he sees that Mozart's just this kid, and that doesn't perhaps take his work seriously because it comes too easy for him. And he says at one point that when Mozart would sit down and write music, it was like taking dictation from God. It's like God telling you the right notes, and you just dictate. Oh, it's this, it's this, it's this. It's very easy. It's like somebody telling you the answers on the test. Number one is A. Oh, okay, it's A. Okay, but that person is not the teacher. It's God.
Astounding. It was beyond belief. These were first and only drafts of music. But they showed no corrections of any kind. Not one. He had simply written down music already finished in his head. Page after page of it, as if he were just taking dictation.
Story set in Vienna. They filmed this all in Prague, and they were, the production of it was really interesting because they were spied on. Even the cast and the crew in their hotels while they were filming this in 81, 82 in Prague, the government was bugging their hotels because they thought maybe they were spies, but no, they were really just making a movie. And Tom Holtz is the great, plays the great Amadeus. A lot of people wanted this. Tim Curry wanted it. Mark Hamill wanted it. And it went to Tom Holtz, who was an unknown, Mozart's, he was 5'4" in real life, little guy, and had that laugh, that very famous laugh. Supposedly that was true. Was very childlike and goofy in real life. So Tom Holtz kind of, portrays that in a loving way, because he is kind of infantile somewhat. And Salieri is F. Murray Abraham. F. Murray wins the Academy Award, beats Tom Holtz out of that Academy Awards for Best Actor. This also gets Best Picture, though, too. And the common joke in this movie is that, did Salieri really kill Mozart? And of course, that's not true. Mozart dies in 1791, but as early as 1830, Pushkin, the playwright, automatically, as quickly as that, starts making this myth that Salieri poisoned Mozart. And then Rimsky-Korsakov, who we talked about, turned this into an opera. So this is not really a new theory that Peter Shaffer came up with. This was very quickly after Mozart died, a very juicy kind of tale that maybe because Mozart died probably from a fever, but there was maybe something a little bit mysterious about how he died. The exact cause of Mozart was a little bit unknown. Maybe it was rheumatic fever, it was an infection, kidney disease, it could have been syphilis. Those are kind of some of the things. And as quickly as 1830, they were like, well, maybe Salieri was friends with him. Maybe he kind of poisoned him. And so, at the age of 35 is when Mozart dies. So it's a good juicy story, but most likely not true at all. Salieri was very successful and richer than Mozart. Mozart made a lot of money, but had a gambling problem and gambled it all away. And Salieri was very well respected, and then his music fell out of favor. We've seen this with composers where Bach wasn't famous in his lifetime, really until Mendelssohn came along. Vivaldi wasn't. Yeah, sometimes it takes hundreds of years for people to get discovered. But Salieri was revered in his lifetime, forgotten, and then probably, because of this myth was brought back to life. And definitely by the 80s, 1980s, everyone knew who Salieri was. So if you remember in the Mozart class that we did, I showed you that scene of Salieri falling in love with Mozart's music, and how we talked about how the oboe comes in, because he was just doing something kind of mundane with this rusty squeeze box till he brought the oboe. And then I asked you, what's your oboe in your life? And I don't know if you came up with that answer. This is a lifelong search. What's one thing that kind of comes in and changes your life in a very subtle way? Because when he heard that oboe, he's, this is a great composer. A mediocre composer would have just done this. Probably some Salieri was thinking, well, I would have just done that probably. But how did Mozart know how to do that? So that was just, we remember that scene. So the scene that I want us to look at and rescore is Salieri's somehow gets trapped in this room because he wanted to get some more chocolates from this party that they're at. And he knows Mozart somewhere is in the vicinity, but he doesn't know which one is Mozart. And so he has this conversation of, what would God choose Mozart to look like? And there's all these different gentlemen in the room. Which one is this genius who, wrote a full-scale opera at 12 years old already? And what does he look like? So when he goes in this room to get, he hides because this rambunctious young sir and, is kind of fooling around with this lady who ends up, he marries her later. And then he realizes that this little rambunctious kid is Mozart, because Mozart starts hearing that they're playing his music, and he has to stop this, hanky-panky and go to conduct it. So all of a sudden he becomes very serious because it's his music. So let's just take a look at this scene. This is when Salieri discovers that this little kid, this filthy little kid, is the great Mozart. And let's take a look at when that happens. Beautiful scene, right? That's the Grand Partita. That's one of his most famous works. That is the work that he talks about having the oboe in. And so I want us to find a Mozart score that could be just in place of this. So it has to be by Mozart. Can't be an opera, because if you look at the ensemble, it's you don't have to follow too closely to the orchestration, but I would like it to seem like it could be in that room. You wouldn't choose an opera because he's just conducting a small ensemble in the room. You wouldn't choose a ballet because no one's dancing. So you do have to do some investigating with what Mozart piece to choose. There's plenty to choose. So I'm just saying not an opera or ballet. but I do want it to look like the music could be something he's conducting with just, a handful of players. So why don't we take a look at the scene just, with no music. It looks silly, right? But that's probably how they filmed it. They had to have complete silence, and because you add sound in post and you add the music, and it just looks silly because he's just conducting nothing. But that shows, the mark of a good actor, because you have to look like you're conducting, some of the most beautiful music ever written. So it's got to be on your face. So that, very good acting by all of them. And Tom Holtz practiced piano like 8 hours a day. He really played a lot of these things, learned conducting. So did F. Murray Abraham. So they had really good musical training and lessons during the production of it, just FYI. So I want you to find a piece of music that was written by Mozart that could easily substitute it for this scene. So, some a little more guidelines this time. And then we're going to look at we're just going to review some music fundamentals tomorrow. And then Wednesday, we're going to look at more scenes from Amadeus. I want to show you how Milos Forman portrayed a composer, how a composer writes, how Mozart probably would have written in real life, because there's some great scenes. We'll talk more about themes that are in Amadeus: genius, mediocrity, God, all of these things as artists that we can all relate to. That's why this movie is so great. You don't really even have to like classical music. This is the internal struggle that we all have as human beings, especially artists, of why do certain things come easier to other people, and are we good enough, and all these big questions. So we're going to talk about more of these questions on Wednesday. So it's going to be a nice Amadeus week. So get this into me by tomorrow. Love you guys. You're going to do great work on this. I'm always here if you need to, even if you just need to say hi, So, okay, I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.